the FHA is failing in their charter of serving the underserved. They truly are. Because like I said, it's not going to hurt me. It's not going to hurt you. It's going to hurt those. Oftentimes, how does this happen? It's going to hurt those who can least afford it.
All right, LabCoatAgents. I'm Shawn Kerley, joined by none other than Mr. Brian Stevens with the National Real Estate Post. And this is our monthly installment of what the hell's going on in the mortgage and real estate market, reporting to you live on Facebook. So, Brian, last time we talked about how the Fed was going in a 2-day meeting, speculation that interest rates were going to go up, which they, in fact, did raise by a quarter rate on the short-term interest rates. But they also came out and said that we are going to start having a runoff on the securities that we've been purchasing. So, for everyone that doesn't know, they've been purchasing $30 billion worth of mortgage-backed securities a month for I forget how long now, to the tune to where they actually have $8 trillion of mortgage-backed securities on their books. What this is doing is keeping interest rates artificially lower than if they weren't purchasing, because the secondary market's not supporting this appetite. So now that they come out, they raise, basically raise prime by quarter, and then talk about that they're going to do all the way up to a full percentage point, maybe even 2, depending on who you're listening to. And now selling, this is only causing more pressure for rates to continually keep on going up on this slide since last October, November. Thoughts?
Yeah, it's when we hear that the Fed is raising the short-term rates, that really doesn't have any impact on mortgage-backed securities and what you're going to pay on a mortgage. Could on your seconds with prime, but it's really not going to have any effect on your what we call our Fannie, Freddie, Ginnie, which is going to be your conforming deals, your VA deals, your FHA deals. In fact, if you're to look back at most of the Fed raises, rates actually go down at that time. What we really need to concern ourselves with is the Fed trying to reduce their profile with their balance sheet and purchasing mortgage-backed securities. And that's the real big one that people don't understand. It's $30 billion. It's an enormous amount of money, and they're doing this every single month. Now, they want to pull back and reduce their balance sheet, but immediately what they want to do is quit buying to the tune of what they were doing over the past couple of years. One thing that is advantageous for us is that because we are closing less business right now than we were last year, or even a year or 2 years ago, that they're going to be purchasing less because there's simply less business going on. But what the Fed is saying is, in addition to that, they want to start offloading some of the mortgage-backed securities at $7 trillion that you're talking about. That's where the rubber really meets the road when it comes to mortgage interest rates. And the reason for that is if just assume this: if the Fed were to quit buying mortgage-backed securities, then we would collectively have to find another market for those MBSs. And well, at the rate of return that people are getting right now, there wouldn't be a huge appetite for mortgage-backed securities. So what do you do when somebody doesn't want the product that you're selling? Well, you make it more appealing. You drop the price, or in our case, we increase the return. We have to increase the return on somebody's investment to the point where they get off the fence and get into the game and start buying MBSs. What that equates to is higher interest rates for all of us. And, we were just talking a moment ago, I do wonder if this is actually going to take place, because when we look at what's happening right now with inflation, which is just, boy, that's a big one right now. That's a big one. The reason they're raising rates right now is they're trying to get our inflation under control. So if they were to pull back on buying mortgage-backed securities, we would see rates rise faster than they're currently going right now. And as we sit here today, the Freddie Mac 30-year fixed rate average is at 4.67% at 0.8% cost. It's not as high as it's been, but guys, we're rounding the corner on 5. And at this rate, it doesn't seem like it's going to be very long before we get to 5. And when you consider we were selling rates that were sub 3 just recently, and that's almost a doubling in rates. Which means we are seriously curtailing the purchasing power of those who are interested in buying what we're selling, and that's properties. So when you consider inflation as it stands right now, if rates continue to go up, that means buying a house is going to be more expensive, which is another form of inflation. This is the big bugaboo right now. So my thinking is that they're going to have to continue buying mortgage-backed securities. It's very interesting how you have to calibrate the market, right? Everyone's saying we're going into a recession right now. What the Fed is doing is they're trying to calibrate to keep us out of a recession, but also try to keep inflation, at bay. And it's a hard thing to do, isn't it? So the thought processing is quit buying mortgage-backed securities, but the unintended consequence of that would be higher interest rates. So my thinking is we're going to see the Fed stay the course. I don't care what they say, because doing anything other than that would almost be suicide for the housing market. And let me just add this one thing, is when we look at, and this is an interview, we'll talk about this in a moment, that I did with David Stevens, the past president of the FHA, the past president of the Mortgage Bankers Association. He said, we got a lot of lip service from the Biden administration during the last election cycle, talking about housing and how important housing was. But if we look at since President Biden, and I'm not being partisan about this, I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat, I'm just pointing this out. And David Stevens, by the way, is an ardent Democrat appointed by the Obama administration. And he's coming out and he's been very critical of what we're seeing from the Biden administration, because when it comes to policies that affect everybody in housing right now, which is kind of teetering on the whole edge of being a crisis, we've really heard nothing but crickets. So you would think that perhaps the Biden administration would start talking about the issues that we have right now in housing relative to what the Fed is doing, and try to come up with a cohesive plan of attack. So we don't find ourselves with interest rates pushing 5.5% or 6%. And boy, wouldn't that be something?
Yeah, and I wasn't very clear whenever I was leading you into that. And I was actually reading something that our inflation numbers go back to the 1980s. I mean, we're 40 years ago. And whenever we looked at what the Fed was raising their rates to curtail even higher inflation, whenever they were coming out of the actual 70s, that they actually, I think it was right around 13% was what their rate was. We're talking about going from a quarter to up to 2%. How much is that really going to slow our economy down to curtail inflation? But anyways, whenever we hear recession, people go doom and gloom. There's data out there that supports that housing still goes up and interest rates go down whenever a recession comes. It does suck as far as your investments, your 401ks and things like that. But for housing, there's always some good good factors on repercussions of what happens in a recession. So,
oh my God, absolutely. But absolutely. Oh, by the way, the Russian central bank just raised, you saw how we've decimated the ruble. The Russian central bank raised their short-term rate from at or near 0 to 20%.
Overnight.
They just did that. They literally did. And look at the ruble. It's doing better. No, listen, recessions are a bad thing for some, but they're also an advantage or a benefit for some other folks. I mean, look at right now, we talk about the first time home buyer, the ability to go out there and get a house. It's rough sledding right now for first time home buyers. And we really don't see, any type of relief in sight. A recession or a downturn in housing would actually benefit first time home buyers. We're not going to get to the point where we're going to see prices collapse because there's too much demand. But there's a certain point of this irrational exuberance that we have in housing right now that I think that kind of cooling the jets a little bit with a recession right now might not be a bad thing. Because if we don't have it like that, this is going to be like a Bezos rocket and just go straight up into space right now in terms of where our prices are at. And so, there certainly is opportunity out there with recessions. And if we do look at all the past recessions, if you take the one that you really want to look at is the St. Louis Fed charts. They have great charts. It's called Fred. You look at the Fred charts out there and you look at recessions as it pertains to housing, then every recession, coming out of recessions, we see prices going up in real estate. Now, here's the thing. What we'll probably see is whenever you go into a recession, what happens with rates is they drop again. So we are starting to see a trajectory of the rates going up like this. Everybody is talking about the pending recession that we're going to go into. So the thinking is we're going to see rates going up, and we're going to hit this recession. And what's going to happen with rates? we're going to see rates drop and start going back down. And how do we see rates go back down? In the corner that we've painted ourselves, I'm telling you right now, it's from the Federal Reserve continuing to buy mortgage-backed securities at a really, really high clip to keep rates, artificially low to get us out of the recession that we're about to go into.
Yeah, and you just hit on first-time homebuyer being priced out. You also talk about David Stevens, very brilliant mind when it comes to this stuff. And with your interview that you put on your show, you guys were talking about how FHA really needs to lower their, I call it the thank you very much fee, their upfront mortgage insurance premium. They charge 1.75% on a 30-year fix, 3.5% down. Thanks for pass and go. It gets rolled into the loan and it goes into their kitty. They have 4 times the amount of what they're supposed to have in the account. So they're rich as hell. And they don't really need to be charging this, which would also help with the affordability with the people that were fortunate enough to get a house under contract that's utilizing FHA financing.
Well, and what Dave Stevens, what he pointed out was this doesn't require approval from the House Financial Services Committee, the Senate Banking Committee, or from Congress, or a presidential executive order. It requires none of that. I mean, once we bring Congress into the equation, everything stalls. Yeah. No, Marcia Fudge, who runs HUD right now, which has jurisdiction over the FHA, she can go ahead and she can lower this if she chooses to. Now, Stevens was talking about 3/8 to 0.5% drop. Is that going to be a big difference in terms of what your house payment is? Absolutely not. But here's the thing. It's an unnecessary fee at a time when we can't afford unnecessary fees. And I'll tell you what I think the big one is I think it strikes a chord saying that this administration is committed to trying to find ways to alleviate the high cost of housing for everybody right now by making this move. It could be more symbolic than anything else. Now, Stevens also pointed out that if HUD were to drop their rate by 3/8 to 0.5%, that the private insurance agencies that our agency Fannie Freddie loans use, they're publicly traded. They're going to see this and they're going to have to drop their rates in kind in order to remain competitive. So a drop in mortgage insurance, which could be done like that for Marcia Fudge, who runs HUD, would also have an impact on almost every loan that's written in this country, and it would drive the price of that loan down. I made this analogy. When we think about gas, really high right now, isn't it? But, well, how do we get gas cheaper? Well, we lower the cost per barrel, right? Well, then it becomes cheaper for our manufacturers to go out there and turn the oil into gas. And we recognize that drop at the pump. Or what we could do is we could drop the exorbitant taxes that every state charges on every gallon of gas. That would be the faster, easier way to do it. In fact, when you look at what gas companies make per gallon, it pales in comparison to what they're making in terms of taxes. So either way, if you drop the tax or you drop the cost per barrel, either way, same result for you. When you go pump your gas, it's less money per gallon. Mortgage insurance is just a tax, just like that. So we can either drop the rate or we could drop the tax, being our mortgage insurance. And in this case, Stevens was talking about dropping the tax, the mortgage insurance, and the overall benefit is going to be a lower monthly payment for you. And finally, on this point, and it can't be overlooked, the truth of the matter is this isn't going to hurt me. It's not going to hurt you. The average inflation, the cost of inflation right now, I just read this a couple of days ago, is $5,200 annually on average. I find that number exceedingly low, but I probably spend more money than most people do. The ones who this is going to hurt is going to be the underserved communities and oftentimes communities of color. And that's because it's, when you look at the FHA right now, African Americans and Hispanics are using the FHA at a 2-to-1 clip as opposed to white Asian Americans. So this is being, the FHA is being used disproportionately more by African Americans, oftentimes who are on the lower ends of the socioeconomic rungs on our scale. And when we look at African American home ownership rates, they've actually gone down over the past 2 decades. We're looking at owner occupancy ratios where on properties of African Americans, which is lower than it was in the 1960s, when we still had deeds of trust that said you can't sell this house to a Black person. I mean, the numbers right now are strikingly embarrassing for us collectively. I mean, this is not This is a catastrophe. Now, so by keeping our mortgage insurance higher than it needs to be, the ones we're harming the most are the ones who are the low to moderate income folks and oftentimes community of color, those who are using the FHA at a 2-to-1 clip. So by keeping it higher, the FHA is failing in their charter of serving the underserved. They truly are. Because like I said, it's not going to hurt me. It's not going to hurt you. It's going to hurt those. Oftentimes, how does this happen? It's going to hurt those who can least afford it. And it's unfortunate, and it's absolutely unnecessary. And I'll tell you this right now, LabCoat guys and gals, this would be a great time for you to write your senator, to write your congressperson, and let them know. Say, demand right now that we lower our FHA mortgage insurance, not necessarily for your personal benefit as a professional real estate agent or a lender, but do it for the overall good of your community and us as a society. I mean that. You can have this whole thing done in a matter of minutes. You can search it on Google. You just, how do I contact my congressperson? It'll pull it right up and write a note there. It doesn't need to be big. It doesn't need to be long. But as Dave Stevens said to me, how wonderful would it be if we as an industry collectively got together and overwhelmed our elected officials and really did something that was for the positive for everybody? And this is something that we can do, and we can all do it today and take you 5 minutes, and it isn't going to cost you a dime.
Yeah. And what I did like to hear, one of the great points that you just talked about is if FHA lowers, then that kind of, they're the horse out first, and then everybody else will.
Yep.
With foreclosure rates where they're at being so darn low, I mean, all these MI companies are making so much darn money. Straight killing it. And I don't want to, I love capitalism. I don't want anybody to lose any money, but ultimately, if they can lower their costs, MI is a direct nugget in monthly payment. So if we squeeze that down, then they can afford more, especially rates going up.
Well, but here's the thing: is FHA is not a publicly traded company.
Yeah,
they're there in service of the United States taxpayer. And the other thing that concerns me, just a final point on this, is we saw this, and I spoke about it at length. But the G fee, the guarantee fee for your Fannie Freddie loans, your typical conventional loans out there, they have a guarantee fee that's baked into the rate. Okay. And so what happens is they're going to take 100 to 125 basis points on every loan that they close. Fannie and Freddie are. The idea behind that money is that works as their coffers in the event that there's foreclosures, that they can go ahead and make that investor whole. It's their insurance policy. And by the way, it's a very reasonable fee. No one's complaining about it. It's the same thing with FHA's mutual mortgage insurance fund. It is their fund, their coffers. In the event of a foreclosure, you can make that investor whole. Back in 2010, when this, by the way, this is like just 2 years after Fannie and Freddie took the largest bailout in the history of the world. True, superlatives, but absolutely true there. That was when we had the BP oil spill in the Gulf.
Yeah.
Remember when British Petroleum went down there in the Gulf and they knocked off the top and it kept shot out like a gallon of oil per second for like 6 months or whatever it was. Well, what happened was we had an infrastructure bill that was getting passed at that time. And so Congress said, well, we don't have enough money for our infrastructure bill. Oh, I got a great idea. Let's take all the money from the G fee, the money that was used for Fannie and Freddie to insure their book of business, who just had to ask for a bailout. And they, in fact, took that money to build an overpass somewhere in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. And they also took part of that money to go clean up the Gulf of Mexico, clean up the Gulf from a British company who destroyed our Gulf. So everybody who was financing mortgages with Fannie and Freddie loans back in 2010, part of the money that they financed, you get to pay for it over the next 30 years of that mortgage, went to clean up the Gulf of Mexico and to build an overpass in Sheboygan and Tucumcari and a whole bunch of other crazy little places out there.
Yeah,
that's a reallocation, and we will earmark money for things it's not intended for. The big concern right now is FHA's mutual mortgage insurance fund is, I think it's sitting at 8.07%. They need to be at 2.25%. So they're at 8.07%. I can't even, it's billions, tens and hundreds of billions of dollars. It's tons of money. When Congress sees a big pile of money like this, and Stevens even talked about it when he was back as a director at FHA, he said, yeah, he goes, this concerned me at the time, and it concerns me now that Congress is looking at this big pile of money and saying, where else can we spend it?
Yeah.
Let's not lower the premium. Let's find other areas of interest where we can go ahead and spend this money. And Marcia Fudge in her her MMI report to Congress annually actually said that in the middle of a sentence, and it was a very peculiar thing. She's talking about the MMI fund, and then she started talking about renewable energy. I'm like, oh no.
Yeah.
No. Now, I'm for renewable energy. I'm for COVID relief. I'm for all of these things, but stay in your lane. Stay in your lane.
Yeah, you're going to see charging stations funded by the fund,
right?
Most likely,
right.
Well, we talked about first-time home buyers being priced out. We are seeing some homes that stay on market a little bit longer than 3 minutes, like everything else, but those are normally beat up, distressed, or still have shag carpet on the walls. I've been telling all of my loan officers, I've been telling all the real estate agents that we work with that this is the time to sharpen your skill set on renovation loans. So your 203K FHA, your home style conventional. It's just something to where if you're not finding the perfect house for your buyers, but you find a house that is distressed, but it's in the school district, it's in the neighborhood, it's in where they want to be, you can use this financing to come in and make the house theirs with a rehab loan. So I don't know if you're seeing an uptick in your office. We've been doing trainings here, and we've actually been seeing a decent amount of applications coming over for these products now.
Well, I'll tell you what, this is interesting. I've been doing this stuff too long. I don't remember when I got old, but I just know it happened. Like one day I'm like, wow, I'm old now.
Yeah.
When I guess when you've got over 3 decades in the industry, you're old. But if you've been writing loans for the past 10 years, you've been taking tickets. You've been taking tickets. And because after the meltdown in 2008, 9, and 10 in that area, we got rid of all the different type of loans. And there were a lot of great loans, guys. They weren't all bad loans. There were a lot of great loans. But we basically threw the baby out with the bathwater. And so everybody's been writing Fannie, Freddie, Ginnie loans. It's pretty straightforward. It's not even writing a loan because you don't have to look at your client and say, what's the best product for you? Oh, I know so many different products. That's the reason you came to me as the proven, true professional mortgage loan officer, because I do understand my business. I do understand my profession, and I'm going to put you in the right loan for you because I have all of these to choose from. For the past 10 years, it's either Fannie, Freddie, Ginnie, clients. That was it.
Yeah.
So now we're starting to see a lot of more loans, even with our non-QM, but especially our construction loans, our home improvement loans. I mean, there's great opportunities out there, but they do require you to learn how to use them, how to do them. You got to go out there. You got to find your contractor. Are they approved? Can you get them approved? How many draws do you get? What happens if you go over cost? What happens if you go under cost on these things? There's so many things that go on with these construction loans. They're not difficult to do, but it does require some intellectual bandwidth on your part. My whole thing is, if you want to be a true professional loan officer, and I'll tell you, as a real estate agent, make sure you're working with a true professional loan officer who understands all the opportunities and options on the table for your clients. And think of this: if you have a loan officer who understands how to do construction loans, okay, you as a real estate agent, all those empty lots, they're in play again. That client who really couldn't find a house because everything's getting outbid, or it's out of their price range, or it just wasn't perfect. You have a loan officer who knows construction loans. All of a sudden, that sucker's in play. And there's a product out here. My old partner Frank Bray was telling me about. There was a company out here. I don't know who it is, and I'm not pitching this, but just to give you an idea. And you could go pick a lot, and they have thousands of houses and permits and designs that you could go ahead and build, and they wrap the whole thing in. So you go buy that lot, and the contractor is the one who's kind of backing this whole thing, and it's just one-stop shopping. Again, I don't know what it is. Don't call me. Don't ask me. It's probably some type of California-based community redevelopment money. It could be something in Northern California. The other thing to consider as a loan officer and a real estate agent, not just our construction loans out there, but is there any money available in your county or in your state that is unique to these type of programs and products? Because everyone is trying to find ways to create affordability. They are. So just keep your eyes out for this stuff. But immediately, if you're a loan officer or a real estate, if you're a loan officer, you need to be looking at construction loans. And if you're a real estate agent, you need to demand that your loan officer is fluent in construction loans, period.
Yeah.
No ifs, ands, or buts.
Yeah, they always say riches, riches in the niches. And I remember in 08 through 10, everything was a FSBO or RE, or I'm sorry, everything was an REO. And I dedicated to becoming a 203 key master, so to speak, and business just shot through the roof because everybody else is just too lazy or terrified of them. But
and by the way, just real quickly, what's funny about that you say that is I've spoken with a number of people who became fluent with 203K loans and construction loans, and they would have their competition sending them deals.
Yeah,
like they're straight up their competition saying, I can't, I don't want it, whatever the case is.
Or our company just doesn't want to take the risk on them, whatever. Yep. But yeah, it was full steam ahead, and it was fun. One of my favorite loans to do. But you said you've been in the business for 30 years. I've been in it for 20. Well, actually going on 20. And we were talking before we went live here that it's amazing how earlier we were on the left side of the pendulum, where we're going back to George Bush days. Coming out of the recovery or the housing issues that they were paying, first-time home buyers, you get $7,500 tax credit, which you have to pay back over 5 years. Yeah. Obama gets into office, goes, well, let's just go ahead and raise that to $8,000, and here's $8,000. You don't have to pay it back. Go buy a darn house. Now we're so far away from that to where it's like these poor people just can't. The market just, there's nothing there for them, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that Stevens was talking about. When we're looking at the administration, I mean, we're getting crickets. We heard during his campaign, all the things that was going to happen with housing. We've really seen nothing. And when you look at particularly HUD, or the GSEs right now, running down redlining and appraising. Well, that's great. Go ahead and run it down if you want to, but that doesn't really do anything to alleviate the pressure for everybody who's looking at trying to find housing. It does nothing for them whatsoever. We're talking about inequities in lending and, mortgage companies with their inequities in lending, their HMDA data being skewed. That's great. Go ahead and, but all the talking points are about things that don't affect people who are trying to purchase homes right now. What I said is, it's kind of like this. If I can't afford the ticket, I don't care what band is playing. I don't care. If I can't afford the price of the ticket, I don't care who's performing. Because it doesn't affect me, I can't get into the show. And that's how a lot of people feel right now about buying a house, is they can't afford to get into housing. That's how they feel. And they're right. That's the problem. So we're not even going to consider it. And that really can leave people destitute and despondent. I was just before we jumped on here reading an article about building generational wealth, and how it's still viewed as owning a house is still the best way for somebody to build personal wealth and intergenerational wealth. And if you are a young parent, an aspiring homeowner, and you want to build wealth for you and your family and possibly have something to pass along to your kids, right now that dream is not a reality for a lot of folks. And we're not hearing a bunch of answers from our elected officials in terms of how this is going to be addressed. I've told you before what I think we should do. I think we should hire the Army Corps. I'm dead serious. I think we should hire the Army Corps of Engineers. We should declare housing a national crisis. Hire the Army Corps of Engineers. Take some of these billions that people so flippantly throw around right now. Dump that money over to the Army Corps of Engineers. Let them hire a bunch of people. I mean, the Army Corps of Engineers can build anything.
Yeah.
I mean, anything. And then what we do is we have them build nothing but entry-level homes across the country that are affordable and reasonable so anybody can get into them. And if you have to use eminent domain, by all means. Here's what I want to see, because I live in Northern California. I live right outside of San Jose, the most expensive real estate in the country. This is where every.com is located, including Zoom, which we're using right now. Every.com is located right here. And I'll tell you what we see. And I just saw this over in Santa Clara. It's everybody wants to help out the underserved and help out the homeless. They want to help out the underhoused. And the city of Santa Clara just knocked this whole thing down. And really what it comes down to, I certainly want to help you.
You just don't move.
But not in my backyard.
Yeah, exactly.
So I say we take Palo Alto, where Facebook is located, and Google, and Atherton, Menlo, Atherton, San Jose, Santa Clara, all the areas of the Silicon Valley. And I say we take a bulldozer and we eminent domain right down the middle of it all and put affordable housing. Single family homes built by the Army Corps of Engineers. Tell me it wouldn't work.
That's comical. Besides the bulldozing, I mean, we can't be just knocking down structures just because.
Oh my
But,
God, all those people can afford houses other places.
yeah, I do love the idea of taking all this extra money that's sitting around and getting it done, because if you're thinking that home builders are going to go, okay, I'm going to start building 2 1s and 3 2s, they're not going to do that, because there's the margin in those homes is just not there where they can build bigger homes and make a bunch of money per unit, and especially how long it's taken to build a house with material costs and things of that nature. So anyway, Brian, it's always fun. Everybody that's still with us, please check out National Real Estate Post. You can go to nationalrealestatepost.com, or better yet, get on your cell phone, go to your app store or wherever the hell you get an app, and type in NREP and download it. And Brian always has a show every single day that comes out with some interesting topics. I've been watching for 10 plus years, however long you've been doing it. I appreciate everything you do with it, and I always love our conversations here, sir.
Thank you, my friend. And you have a great day. You have a great week, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
Yes, sir. We'll talk to you.
All righty, guys. We'll talk.
Bye-bye.
Bye.